Hello, everyone. I'm mighty happy to be here today and to read to you from the Word of God and to carry on our evangelistic service. I'm going to read the first verse of probably the best loved part of the Bible, the first verse of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. May God bless the reading and the hearing of His holy word. The title of my message today is rather provocative. What is your substitute for God? As I travel over the world, as I preach to tens of thousands of people in the United States and foreign lands, as I receive mail from people in different parts of the earth, I come face to face with this problem of God's substitutes. The various substitutes that men are seeking to replace the existence of God, or to find in some other source the warmth, the security, the joy that they find only in God. Why do people seek a God substitute? Why do they not come to Him immediately when they're a little child? Why don't we human beings start our search for God while we're still little children or in our teens? Well, perhaps it is because of our prenatal experience. You know, when the baby is carried in its mother's womb, it's surrounded by love, warmth, security. Everything is joy there. And all of a sudden, the child is born. It's a rather shocking experience. It's painful to be born into this world. Suddenly, the little child that has been so dependent upon its mother, that has been surrounded by all love and warmth and security, is thrown upon the world, born into a world of pain, of consciousness. Within seconds, the baby becomes a totally independent creature and comes to grip with the complexities and the rigors of this life. Well, there's more or less of a desire to return to the womb, to find again the place where everything was joy. You know, God compares Himself to a mother and to a mother's love. And the love and warmth we have in our prenatal life is a type of what God Himself offers us. Now, when the little baby is born in a world of pain and consciousness and comes to grips with the rigors and complexities of life, it starts to grow. And as it grows, it comes up against these different painful experiences. It almost automatically starts going back or seeking a substitute for the warmth and the security it knew during those months immediately before its birth. And many, many people then make the mistake of seeking a substitute for God rather than giving themselves to God. They don't seem to understand. But all they had in those prenatal days is a preparation and to give them a desire for the true warmth and security which only God can give. You know, you were made by God. And God left a place in the human heart for Himself that only He can fill and satisfy. Now, the communists are seeking power. That's their substitute for God. And in the power they seek, the domination they try to find over mankind, they seek for warmth and security. Oh, when I was in Moscow some months ago for several days, I felt this on every side, a burning search, an almost insane search for power, for domination, trying to find a little warmth and security, not understanding that that can only be found in God. Some people turn to pursuit of power on a personal basis. Some love money, feeling if they can have enough money that they will have this warmth and security. Others add automobiles and houses and lands and stocks and bonds and things. If I can only have a fur coat or if I can have a sport car, or if I can make a trip. Oh, I'll be so happy. I'll be so happy. Well, those things have their place, but none of them can be a successful substitute for God, who is the real source of warmth and love. I remember when our first child, Rebecca Ann, was born. When she was, 6 or 8 or 10 months along in there, I had the first experience of being left with her for several hours. I was a very young father, and when her mother, Evelyn, had to go on an errand, she said, Oral, now you keep Rebecca Ann while I'm gone. So it was no problem for an hour or two, because she'd left me her formula, and I warmed up the bottle and gave it to Rebecca, and she was happy. She'd coo and play there in her little bed. But after a while, she became restless. So I went over and picked her up and began to cuddle her and rock her some, and that helped. But it was not long until she became even more restless. And all of a sudden, she yelled out, and her little body became stiff. She just stiffened out in my arms. And I walked the floor, and I would rock her, and I talked to her, and I took her formula and heated up the bottle again and gave it to her, and she wouldn't have it. And by the time her mother got home, I was having a time with my child. But you know, when that little thing saw its mother coming in, she began to reach out her arms. And when Evelyn took her, oh, my darling baby, began to cuddle her and speak to her and coo to her, she gave her the warmth and the security that Rebecca had to have, that at that time I did not know how to give. And that is so much like us human beings. Things of this world have a great deal of power. They have some power to satisfy us, at least on a temporary basis. We can get this new car, this new fur coat, or make this trip, or add this piece of land, or have a little more power over some individual, and we're satisfied for a while, but after a while it wears off. And soon we become restless. It's at that point that we must turn to God. Because if we don't, we will have a substitute for God. And that substitute can never give warmth and love. It can never provide us with the joy, with calmness and relaxation of body, mind, and spirit. We turn to these things, but we become miserable. We're filled with inner conflicts, frustrations. We begin to drink. And we have tens of thousands of men and women in America, in the world, who have become confirmed alcoholics because they haven't turned to God. There's that place in their hearts that God left for himself that only he can fill, only he can satisfy. But they've turned to a God substitute. Now, all they can think of is to drink and to carouse and to throw themselves away in an endless, fruitless search for that warmth and security. And that warmth that we had in our mother's body now can only be had in God. Because our mother is like our God, and God compares himself to our mother. In the Bible, we're told about men who had this problem. We're told about women and children and how they fill the void in their lives. David cried, "My heart panteth after God, like a thirsty animal pant after water." There was a little girl in the Bible whose master, General Naaman of Syria, was a leper. He was dying, and one day she said, "Would God, my Lord, where were the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy." That little girl said, "Would God." She knew. Once the little boy Samuel, who later became the prophet of Israel, was asleep, and all of a sudden he was awakened, and the voice said, "Samuel, Samuel." He thought it was the priest Eli, and he said to him, "What do you want?" The priest misunderstood and had the child to go back to bed, and 3 times this happened, and finally the priest discerned it was God and said, "Son, the next time you hear it, you say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth thee.'" It was God calling the little boy, and the little boy responding. And when God said, "Samuel, Samuel," he opened wide his eyes and said, "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth thee." Some years ago, I was visiting a head of state in a foreign land. This man's now gone to his reward, and I felt inspired to give him this poem, I Met the Master. I had walked life's way with an easy tread, had followed where comforts and pleasures led, until one day in a quiet place I met the Master face to face. With station and rank and wealth for my goal, much thought for my body, but none for my soul, I had entered to win in life's mad race when I met the Master face to face. With station, I met him and knew him and blushed to see that his eyes full of sorrow were fixed on me. And I faltered and fell at his feet that day while my castles melted and vanished away. Melted and vanished, and in their place naught else could I see but my Master's face. And I cried aloud, "Oh, make me meet to follow the steps of thy wounded feet." My thought is now for the souls of men. I've lost my life to find it again. E'er since that day in a quiet place, I met my Master face to face.